I'm not the comic guy. And what I was playing here today, it's it's a brand new explain history. This time another. This time another remake of another explain history. Now the last time I did explain history, there was not much to say after what was coming out. But today, since it was a new movie, today I'm redoing an explain history of Superman. See, it all starts with a couple writers and artists called Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, who first created Superman in Action Comics #1 in 1938. After his appearance in Action Comics, he then has own solo series a year after. However, Superman began when continuing on as first appearance on screen in an animated and something of animation back in 1941, just called The Adventures of Superman. No, not one George Reed, but these animated segments just called Superman. Not too long after, we had his debut in live action with a couple of film serials. The former from 1948 called Superman, and the latter from 1950 called Superman vs. Ant-Man vs. Superman. Of course, after a while, we then get its next on-screen use in 1951's movie Superman in the Moment. And this one actually starred an actor named George Reeves as Superman. Yes, same last name as Christopher Reeves, yet no relation. Anyways, after the show has continued, after that, there was a TV series that followed called The Adventures of Superman. It aired from 1952 to 1958. However, because of that, it has not been aired again. This is why, after a while, we never actually see Superman in live action in a while. However, when that's over with, we then had a plan, something called the Comics Code Authority, and each comic hero at the time was affected by the words of one man, Frederick Warfield, Superman included. Thus, we had silly out random stories. Like the series called Superman's Pal, Jimmy Olsen. However, it introduces the idea of other Kryptonians besides just him, like his cousin Supergirl or his dog Crypto. But after a while, this started to change with the Bronze Age of comics. And then afterwards, we got ourselves another pack of films, this time with an actor named Christopher Reeve. In 1978, Superman the movie had happened. 1980, and then after that, it got a few sequels. Superman 2 from 1980, Superman 3 from 1983, and Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, 1987. However, the failure of this fourth movie is the reason why there hasn't been another Superman film after near a couple of decades. Instead, relegated to a few TV series. First one being called The Adventures of Superboy, then Lois and Clark, and then one show called Smallville. In the comics, there was a thing in 1985 called Crisis on Infinite Earths. And that led to merger Earth 1 and 2, merging into New Earth, saying our first reboot of the DC universe. Which means Superman's story had to be retold to a new origin, and that then trying to erase other characters involved with Superman. Such as not having Crypto and killing off his cousin Supergirl. By the time this continuity around, they were already trying to clean up what was going on. But then an infinite story happened called Death of Superman that introduced an interesting foe for Superman, Doomsday, who at the end of the story, just like it said, killed Superman. Thus he sacrificed himself for his death. At least for a short time. See, after a while, people demanded to bring him back to life. And so DC did, with a fully black suit and the infamous yet unfortunate use of a mullet. And also he had guns for some reason. Yes, Superman with straps and guns. This is not the only time we see Superman with guns. That will be saved for another video. Anyway, after a while, we get continuations of this story of Superman. We then see a story where he was split into two versions of himself, one being red and the other one blue. We see so many stories where Superman include so many stories with Superman after he returned, and during those stories we introduced to a Puffla Superman. We got himself a clone made by Lex Luthor called Superboy, we got the character called the Eradicator. We got literally a Superman made of metal called Steel. And then, of course, there was Cyborg Superman. A little Superman that's literally a machine. And he finally was strange enough in Superman's stories in the Silver Age. Just look at back then and after the death and revive of Superman. After a while, it didn't take long for another reboot of the DC Universe with the story called Flashpoint. Flashpoint was an alternate reality that pretty much been a reality that made like a what-if scenario of different heroes. Again, this included Superman himself. After that, after the story had ended, we then see Superman in another reboot of the DC Universe, the New 52, and the start of Prime Earth. However, we didn't stop there as just starting again with the comics, because we also had to start again with the movies. See, after a few years of the not-so-successful Superman Returns, we got another Superman movie called Man of Steel. A not-so-Superman-ish Superman, if you get what I mean. But however, after that cinematic universe failed, it was time to restart this DCEU into the DCU, thanks to James Gunn. Starting with his newest movie, just called Superman. Yeah, get used to that. Get used to that. However, this also caused a spin-off movie with his cousin Supergirl and anything else that will be possible in the future, including the sequel to this newest movie of his. However, I'm Matt the Comic Guy. See you at the start of next month. Bye.